Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hey, it's Jen. Welcome back to the Bible for Busy People. This week we've been talking about the Pharisees' encounters with Jesus. But we're going to switch gears for a quick minute. Give me a second to gush about one of my favorite animated movies, Inside Out 2, and it will relate. We'll get there in a minute. So in the movie, the emotions in a teenage girl's mind scramble to give her a sense of self, which is mostly made up of good things like being a good friend and daughter and student. But when she comes to terms with the imperfect parts of her, she becomes anxious. She doesn't know how those fit into her sense of self. Without giving too much away, by the end, she learns how to accept and embrace all the different parts of herself. When I saw it, I cried. In the movie, the girl is hyped up by her traditionally good qualities, but she hasn't had to come to terms with the complexities of her character because she's young. However, sometimes we know those complexities, we know our failures, and we bury or we flat out refuse to see our flaws. We can even be one way on the inside and project a completely different appearance on the outside. The Pharisees are a case study in this, and in this passage, Jesus lays it all out for them and for us. So even though we aren't the ones in the moment that Jesus is speaking to, we can actually get a lot out of this passage. We're reading today in Matthew 23, starting in verse 1. It says, "Then Jesus said to the crowds and his disciples, 'The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them.' Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by the others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father, for you have one Father and he is in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Now, if you're not familiar with the terms, phylacteries are leather boxes worn by Orthodox and conservative Jews, even today, to carry the scriptures with them. They're worn on the forehead and arm. These were to address the passage in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 8 that says, "Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads." It's a way of showing devotion to God and respect for the law. However, the way the Pharisees did it here was without heart. If you go back to the verses before Deuteronomy 6 verse 8, it says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up." Jesus was criticizing the Pharisees' practice of trying to show off their supposed righteousness without living out the law, and he called them back to the goal of having them write the law on their hearts. Jesus also made the point that it's not about titles either. He basically told them that the more they tried to put themselves up on pedestals, the less they were who God intended for them to be. Humble, dependent on God, not full of themselves. Reading on in verse 13, it says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when you have succeeded, you make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. Woe to you, blind guides! You say if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath. You blind fools! Which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? You also say if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gift on the altar is bound by that oath. You blind men! Which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Therefore, anyone who swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And anyone who swears by the temple swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. And anyone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and by the one who sits on it. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides! You strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. We'll stop there for now, but you can go back and read the rest on your own. But in these passages, which mostly speak for themselves, Jesus called attention to how the Pharisees have had a tight grip on the law and societal standards, but they've lost their heart for God and their devotion within. It's become all about displaying importance and projecting it to other people. Their actions confirm in this how they're jealous of Jesus and plot to expose and kill him. They aren't seeking God because God is right in front of them. They couldn't miss him if they were looking for him, but they were more concerned with holding on to their customs and control. Here, Jesus is going over a lot of the customs and traditions that the Pharisees had of keeping to the law, but they were missing out on the heart of God, which is justice and mercy and faithfulness. That's what God desired for them to do, and instead, they were much more about their appearance. Again, Jesus was speaking to them at that time in history, but the warning is for us. Will we, as followers of Christ, be more concerned with our appearance of being right and good? Are we going to hold others to the same meticulous, unnecessary standards? Or will we live like Christ, choose humility, submit to God, have a heart that absorbs God's word, and have a life that reflects God's compassion and generosity? I'm going to leave you with those questions. Make sure you go back and just read through the whole chapter. And thank you for going over all of this with me. I really feel like there was a lot of value here this week, and I can't wait to chat with you again next week on Monday. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume two things about you. First of all, that you're a busy person. And second, that you are in need of a restful break. Cannon Beach Conference Center is the place for a beautiful coastal retreat. Whether it's one of their enriching conferences or your own church or ministry event, you can find out more at 800-745-1546 or visit cbcc.net. Thank you to Cannon Beach Conference Center for sponsoring the Bible for Busy People.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.